Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video on ATS modding using Blender. I received a message the other day asking about how I created a decal for the Lone Star Legacy, how I created the several decals that I had located around the truck, and they asked if I could create a decal for the SCS flatbed trailer. And this is creating a decal is pretty simple. The hard part is creating the mod to get it in the game. So what I'm going to do is divide this up into two videos. The first video, I'm going to show you how to modify the models to create the decal. And then the second video, I'm going to show how to actually create the mod to put it in the game. So, without further ado, I will go ahead and modify the models for the decals. So if you watch my other videos, you can see how I prepared the files for importing into Blender. So I'm not going to go into any detail for that. I have already converted my files over to the pit and pim that I can import into Blender. So I'm just going to go ahead and import the chassis. So if I go to the base folder that I created, and I go into vehicle, and you want to go into the trailer owned folder, not the trailer folder, the trailer owned folder, and go SCS flatbed, and then I want the chassis. So that's what I'm going to create the decal for, the chassis. And I'm going to create a decal for the 3-axle 53-foot flatbed trailer. So I'll import that into Blender, and then I will hide everything but the model itself. And this is our 53-foot flatbed chassis. Also in this video, the person that messaged me also wanted to convert this over into a painted frame instead of just a standard black frame. So I'm going to do that as well. And I will do that first. So just like any other models that are mod, you have to separate this frame out from the rest of the model. You want the landing gear and the running gear, all that separate. So over in our layers menu, I know that piece 2, by clicking on it, I know piece 2 is the actual frame. So I will go and I'll hide everything else except for piece 2. And then what I want to do is just isolate the frame and make a copy of it. So I'll go into tab to put it in edit mode, and you can see it's in edit mode right up here. And then I want it in vertices. So I got vertices highlighted. And then we'll look at the X view. And another thing, make sure that you are in X-ray, because if you're not in X-ray, it will not select all the way through the model, and that'll cause you some issues. So make sure that you're in X-ray so you can select all the way through the model. And if you look now, see I have selected all the way through the model. And then I want to link all these vertices back to these. So if you hit Control L, it will select all the linking vertices. And as you can see, the frame is selected, and I want to also paint these cross members, so I'll need to highlight them as well. And to highlight those, in addition to the frame, you have to hit Shift, and now you can highlight the rest of it without deselecting the actual frame itself. So we got a few more things that we need to select. And remember to hit Control L to link. Alright, so that looks good. I think the whole frame is selected. Alright, so the next step is we got to make a copy of this. So in order to make a copy, you go Shift D, Enter, and then hit P on your keyboard. Then you want to separate it out by selection. And if you'll notice over here in your layers menu, you created a new piece. And if we hide piece 2, you should have nothing but the frame left. Alright, so to make this a painted frame, you have to put a paint shader on it. So right now, if we look in the material tab, and the material tabs is kind of down here at the bottom, it kind of looks like an earth, a globe. If you click on it and you scroll down, you can see that this has a diff spec Oculus weight shader on it. So we can't use that shader. So what we need to do, we need to delete the shader that's on this frame right now. And in order to delete the shader, you have to delete the material that the shader is attached to. So this is the material, matte _ 0002 _ tileable. That's our material, and we're going to just hit the minus, and that will remove the material from the frame. So now we have to add a new material. So if you come here and you hit new, you're going to get a new material, and we're going to rename this to matte chassis paint. Now we need to assign the right shader to the chassis, and like I said, you have to assign, if you want this to be painted in the game, you have to assign it the truck paint shader. So under our materials, right here is where your shaders are, and if you click where it says none, it shows all the shaders for American Truck Simulator right here. And then you want to look for the truck paint shader and select it. So now we have the truck paint shader selected, and you'll notice that you have some flavors here. If you want to add a normal map to it, you can add it here. If you want to add a color mask to it, you can add it. Airbrush, but I'll just leave it just straight truck paint for right now. Alright, so when you select the truck paint shader, you're going to get a base, and then you're going to get reflection, and then you're going to have these mappings, and you're going to get 3 mapping options with your base texture. And then for reflection, this is going to be vehicle reflection. So if you hold your mouse cursor over to where your texture is located at, you can see it's located in your environment, and it's called vehicle reflection. So we don't have any red here, so we know that the vehicle reflection is good. So now we just have to add our mappings. So we'll add UV _ 0, then we'll add UV _ 1, and UV _ 2. And then you'll notice that we're missing a texture file for our base, so we've got to select a texture file for it. And I've already created one. I called it Color DDS, and I just made it in paint.net, and this is a 512 by 512 DDS and I just saved it into my base folder. So if I go over here and I look at my base folder, and let me bring that up real quick. If I go into Vehicle, Trailer Owned, SCS Flatbed, let's see, here is my color, texture, and then you have to create a TOBJ for your texture file. So you can just, what I did, I just copied this Chrome box TOBJ and just renamed it color TOBJ. And don't forget to edit the file path. So I put color.dds in my file path. So when we go back to Blender, I'll just click on this folder out to the side and I'll go to that color DDS file. So here it is, I'll select it. Alright, so now we have color on our chassis. And it's always going to show up red in Blender. So that's not the color we assigned to it. Remember, my texture file is actually white, but every color in Blender just shows up as red. Alright, so now we've got a paint shader assigned to this chassis. And if we go back to our layers, now we basically have two frame rails. One's on piece 2 and is black. So if we hide our one that we put the truck painter on, shader on it, you can see that we still got the black frame. So we're going to have to delete this black frame. And we'll delete it the same way we made a copy to apply the paint shader to. So we'll highlight piece 2.001, and then we'll delete the frame from piece 2. And like I said, we'll delete that the same way. We'll go tab and edit, and then we'll just highlight everything that we want to get rid of. Now if you do this and you accidentally selected something you did not want to get rid of, you can hit Control and it will undo what you just selected. Okay, so we'll finish selecting the rest of it. Remember to hit Shift. I selected some stuff I did not mean to. Alright, and then we gotta get the front here. Okay, I think we have selected everything. I've got a front brace here I still need to select. And I've got one here I need to select. Alright, and then once you've selected it, you can hit X, and then you want to delete the vertices. So now our frame is deleted, and now we can select 2, and now you have a painted frame. Okay, everything looks good. Alright, so that's the first part of it. We now have a frame that we can paint in our options menu inside the game. The next thing we need to do is create the decal for this trailer. And there there are some decals that are already in a texture file right here. Then you got the VIN number and a few other decals. I want to keep all these other ones, but this one's kind of large and I want to make it smaller, kind of keep it in the same place but make it a little bit smaller so I can put my own message in this area of the frame. So what I'll do, I'll select it and go into edit mode by hitting tab, and then I will select it. And then I will just hit S for scale, and I'll just make it a little smaller and just move it up some. And then I'll do the same for the other side, scale. And then I'll move it up just a hair to the top of the frame. All right, so now it's time to create the decal for this trailer. So creating a decal is pretty easy, but what we want to do, we want to duplicate the faces in the area that we want to create the decal. So if we go to our frame piece, which is piece _ 2.001, which is our chassis frame. If you go into tab and then make sure that you've got faces selected up here. So now we have faces selected, and you want to turn off your X-ray. And the reason why you want to turn off your X-ray, because if you don't, you're going to, when you select this side here, it's going to select everything straight through your frame, and the only thing we want to make a copy of is this face. So let's undo that, and we'll take the X-ray off. So I want to take these faces here. This is going to be what we make our decal out of. So I'll select these faces, and then I'll go to the other side and I'll select these faces and make sure we still got the faces selected the same on both sides, which we do. And remember how we made it, we got to make a copy of this. So remember how we made a copy of our frame? We hit Shift D, enter, and then P, and then we want to separate it by selection. Okay, so now we have a new piece called piece _ 2.002. So if we hide everything, you can see that we have the face of the frame, which we will use to make our decal. So to make a decal, it's pretty simple. So right now, these pieces have the truck paint shader on it. So we have to remove the truck paint shader. So remember, you got to remove the material to remove the shader. So if we come up here to Material tab, we can see that it's got that shader that material that we created, the matte _ chassis _ paint. So we'll delete that. Hold on just a second. All right, make sure that you have the pieces selected and then subtract it. All right, so now they turn white because there's no materials assigned to it, no shader. And we want to create a new material for it, so we hit new, and we'll call this matte decal. All right, so we got, if we scroll down, we can see that we have nothing selected for shader. you can see the none. So if we select it, you want to look for a shader called diff spec, DIF.SPEC, and we'll select that. So now we have a diff spec shader on those faces for our decal. And then we can look up here and we can see that it's a diff spec shader, and then there's a few options that we need to select for those frame faces. One is called decal, and we'll select the decal, and then the other one is over. So make sure those two are selected. And you can see that now it's invisible, just like a clear decal. So if we click off, even though the piece is selected, we can't see it. All right, so we're almost there. So we still got some errors in our base with our mapping. So we want to make sure and what I do, I usually select UV1 to map it to, because that's usually what your paint skins are mapped to. And then as far as the texture, you have to create a decal sheet for your texture. And the way you create, well, it's a template. We're going to put this on a template, and we have to have a template, and we have to have an image so that we can put this in our texture. So creating a template is not hard. It is a little bit time consuming, but for the most part, not hard at all. So you go to UV editing, and you can see that here are our faces. And this time you want to make sure that you do have your X-ray selected, and you want to make sure that you're on faces, which we are. And then you want to do these one at a time. You want to select one side at a time. So now we have one set of faces selected, and then you want to open it's just, all it is an image. It's in a PNG format, and I keep them in a folder where I make all my templates for all my trucks and my trailers, and I know I have a copy in one of my folders. But anyway, it's a 4096 by 2048 paint.png. You can make it in paint.net. It doesn't really matter. Just go File, New, and then you can just type in 2048, or I'm sorry, 4096 2048, and hit OK. And then you can just save this as a PNG file. That's what I'm opening up in Blender. Is this 4096 by 2048 PNG. All right, so if you look, when we highlight this, we can see the mapping of the part, and here's the mapping. And you can tell it's not even close to being mapped correctly. And there's the mapping for the other side. So what we need to do, we need to map it to this template right here. So like I said, just select one side at a time, and then you want to put it on the X view. You don't want it any other way other than straight on the X view. And make sure you're on faces, and then you want to right click, and then you're going to see an option that says UV Unwrap Faces, and you want to select project from view. All right, so now we had just remapped this one side here onto this, and then I want to try to get it to look similar to this. So I want to scale it. This over here in this window, you have 3 axes. You got the XYZ axis, but over here in the UV editor, you only got two axes. Up and down axis is Y, and then left and right axis is X. So this is a little thin. So what I'd like to do is just scale it in the Y direction. So I'll hit S and then Y, and then I'll just scale it in the Y direction. That's pretty close. They look about the same. But I can make it bigger. I can take up this whole template, so I'll make it bigger. So I'll just hit scale, and I'll just scale it out. Like so. And now I can select this other side. Let me select it and deselect that. Okay, so make sure that you go back to your X view, and it's the same process. You just right click, hit UV Unwrap Faces, and then project from view. Now once you've unwrapped the once you remap the face, you can select both of them, and now both of them shows up on your template. And notice they're 2 different sizes. So I want to make this side equal in the X and Y directions to the other one. So I'll select it. And remember, all you got to do is select one vertex and then hit Control L, and it'll select all of them that's attached to it. So that's what I did, to select this one side. So we'll grab it and we'll put it probably somewhere in the center. And remember, I want to scale it in the Y direction, so I hit S, Y, and then I'm going to scale it out until the width is about the same. And then I'm going to hit scale, scale in the X direction, and then I'll just keep scaling it until it's close. And now I've just made a template for our decals. Now in order to save this template, you'll see a selection called UV. Select it and go down to the bottom where it says Export UV Layout. Right here at the bottom, Export UV Layout, and select it, and then you want to export it to a folder. And like I said, I keep all my templates in a certain folder on my computer. So here's the flatbed trailer, and I want to save it, and this will save as a PNG file. So I've already got a template I've already got a template made of the trailer that I made to create this video, so I'm not going to redo it. But the process is the same, and I'm going to show you what it looks like when you open it in paint.net. So if we go over here and we go to open and we go to where our template is saved at, which is Documents, Blender, then Flatbed Trailer. This is what it looks like. So when you import it into paint.net, it's going to look similar to this. This is our template. And so what I normally do, I just go ahead and create a new layer, and then I will make that layer white so it shows up better. And then what I'll do, I'll open whatever image that I want to put on that texture file. So I'll go to my pictures, and I've got one that says Western Star on it. So let me find that image. Sorry, it's here somewhere. There it is. Sorry, I didn't really see it that well. Okay, so I got this Western Express image, and I want to save it to my template. So I'll copy it, and then I will paste it as a new layer. And then I will duplicate that layer. All right. So I want to save this as a DDS file, because this becomes our new texture file. And so I'll hide everything except for these Western. And then what you need to do, you need to save it in its own separate folder. And what I did, I created a folder called Decal. And inside this Decal folder, I created 3 different textures, called Decal 1, Decal 2, and Decal 3. And basically I made a white one, a black one, and a red one. So if I go back to Blender, and I go back to modeling, and then I go back to my material tab, I'll go down here and I'll assign Decal 1 to this face. So I'll go to my Decal folder, and I'll assign Decal 1. Give me just a few seconds. Okay. So the reason why you can't see that Western Express on here is I make this mistake, and I made a mistake, and I'm going to try to explain to you what I did. So there's several UV layers of mapping. And if we click on here, you'll notice we got UV0, UV1, and UV2. So what happened when I mapped these out, I used the wrong layer. It's supposed to be mapped on UV1. I probably mapped these on UV0. So if we go back to the UV editing and I hit tab, you can see that I've mapped it on UV0 and it needs to be mapped on UV1. So just to kind of show you, all I'll do, I'll change this mapping to UV0, and then you should see the Western, and there it is. So if we go to, if we take it out of, so now we just made our decal. And we've got one that's mapped a little bit off on UV0. So let me show you how we can fix that. Is I will go, because these were made on a different template, is the reason why it's off a little bit. So we'll open that image, and then what I'll do, I'll just remap it to this DDS file. So you can see, like this one right here, that's why it's up at the top. So basically what I'll do, I'll just select it and just move it up just a little bit. So I'll slide it up, and then I'll slide this other one up a little bit. To where it's kind of in the middle. There. And now you can see that now my decal is in the center. So now if I make everything visible, now you can see that we have a decal on the side of the frame, and we can make it anything we want. This one says Western Express. So that's how you make a decal, but we're not completely through yet, because we have to make this decal into a root object so that we can put it in the game as an option. And that way we can change it as an option. So if we select the object, that's the decal, which is piece _2 .002, and we go up here to the SCS tools, we go to add, and we want to make it a root object, so we select root object. And now we have a new game object, and we'll change this to say decal _1. All right, so whenever you make a root object, that new root object is going to be created wherever your cursor is at. So in this case, our cursor is at our world origin, which is where our X, Y, and Z axis cross. And I want to change where this pin for this decal comes in, somewhere in the center of the chassis, close to where this decal is going to be applied. So I have to move the, basically what I'll do, I'll just put this piece back into the chassis, and I'll delete this decal 1, so I'll delete it, and then I'll move my cursor to where I want the option pin to be in the game. So to move the cursor, you press shift and then right click. So now the cursor is moved about to where the Western Express decal is. We can move it back a little bit. And then as you can see, it's a little bit over to the left side of the frame, and I want it kind of in the center a little bit. So I'll just place my mouse cursor near the center, hit shift and right click, and now it's pretty close to about where my decal is. So when you get in the game and you're searching for the pin to apply this decal, it's going to appear in this area here. Alright, so now we need to recreate our root object. So if we highlight our decal again, and we go back up here to add root object. Now our root object comes in where our cursor is at. So I'll change the name up decal _1. And now we have a game object called decal _1, and our decals in it. Now you can have as many decals as you want, and so for my example, I made 3 separate decals. And so what I did, I just selected these 2, copied, and then paste, and then I renamed the second one decal 2, decal _2. And remember, every time that for every root object, you got to have a different texture file. So if I select this, I got to select another texture file for it. So I go to my material tab, and where this has got decal 1 selected, I'm just going to select decal 2. So now I have decal 2 selected, and it's a black. It's the black decal. And then I'm going to make another decal and call it decal 3. And you can make as many of these as you want. The sky's the limit. Each one of these will just appear as a separate option in your game. So I got 3 decals called decal 1, decal 2, and decal 3. And these are all root objects. Now there's one more thing that we need to do before we can finish modifying our models for the decal. And the other one, we have to put the pin inside the chassis so that this decal option will show up. So if we highlight the chassis and we go up here to add, SES tools, add, we want to add a model locator. So when you add a model locator, whatever you have selected, it's going to put a model locator, it's going to call it ML. And that model locator is going to come in where your cursor is, and that's what you want. Your model locator and your root object has got to match. So I'm just going to rename this model locator decal. All right, so let me say this one more time. Your model locator and your root object have got to match. So the easiest way to do that is to make sure that your cursor, put your cursor where you want it, where you want the locating pin to come in at. Put your root object at your cursor, and then put your model locator at your cursor. Okay, that's very important. If you don't move those, then whatever root object you have tied is going to come in where your model locator is located at there. And if you've got it at the world origin, that's where your decal is going to come in at world origin. Make sure your root object and your decal or your model locator match. And that's it. You have created a model. Now you do have to change the name of the chassis because we've modified the original SCS chassis. Unless you want to modify the original 3-axle chassis, rename this chassis to anything you want. So I'll just rename it CH_53 PNT for paint. So when in the next video, whenever we create the mod to put in the game, we're going to just create a separate chassis for the flatbed, and that chassis we will be able to paint and we'll be able to add decal to. So that's coming up in the next video. Remember, please like this video or dislike it. But if you dislike it, please leave a comment in the feedback so I can know what to correct for my next video. Leave feedback so that I know what you want in a video. Show me what mods you want to see. That's how I came up with this one. Somebody left me a comment, wanted to see how I made the decals. So if there's anything that you want to see, please leave them in the feedback section. And appreciate if you would subscribe. All right, till next video. Class dismissed.